Avengers Age of Ultron has its fair share of issues. While some people liked the film, there are a lot of fans out there who are very underwhelmed by the second Avengers film. But most of us can agree the one thing that didn't hit the mark is the film's villain, Ultron. We're here today to fix Ultron and offer a way for how the villain could have worked better. Our idea includes some dark and cold ideals about what is the best way to protect the world. So if you're ready to hear us out, be sure to click on that subscribe button and be sure to ring the bell to join our notification squad, because we have a mission, and that mission is to fix all the films ever. And we mean ever. Let's be honest, Avengers Age of Ultron was a mixed bag. On one hand, it had the impossible task of living up to the insane hype of the first Avengers film, but on the other hand, the film ended up being extremely underwhelming. We're not saying Age of Ultron was terrible, we just feel like it could have been so much more than it actually was. Whether you're a fan of Age of Ultron or someone who feels disappointed by it, you have to admit that the one major issue with the film was the villain. Ultron wasn't the worst villain ever. The MCU gave us plenty of not-so-great bad guys over the years, but we felt like Ultron should have been, well, better. When it was first announced Ultron would be the main villain of the second Avengers film, Marvel fans rejoiced. After all, Ultron is one of the most iconic villains in the comics. His comic book history goes all the way back to the 60s, and the Avengers have been clashing with him over the course of countless issues and storylines. In many ways, Ultron is the arch nemesis of the Avengers. But after watching 2015's Avengers Age of Ultron, many fans couldn't help but feel disappointed by the movie version of Ultron. And so, this calls for a fix. In our opinion, the main issue with Ultron is that he was simply not the menace that he should have been. We can't blame James Spader for that, considering that with some adjustments, Spader's Ultron could have been one terrifying murderbot. The real problem with Ultron is that he never actually feels like a real threat for the Avengers. He never really gets the upper hand, and he gets his metallic behind kicked in almost every scene. Ultron's overall plan also felt very flat. How many MCU villains had the same plan of destroying the world? Not only is it generic, there was never a real sense of high stakes. And it's a shame that Marvel Studios went with such a generic plot and villain approach for Avengers Age of Ultron. So far in the MCU, we had few villains that really hit the mark. And there's usually a good reason for that. What made Loki so special in the first Thor film is that from a certain point of view, he's right. The way Thor was behaving in the first half of the film shows that he would have been a disaster of a king. And so, by Loki causing Thor's exile, Thor is humbled and he becomes a better person and in turn a better hero. Loki may have done some evil things to achieve his goals, but his intentions were pure and on some level justifiable. And that's pretty much the recipe for a great bad guy. A villain should be more than just something that moves the plot forward. They need to be a character that stands on their own, but at the same time offer a contrast to the hero, be both a physical and a mental challenge to unbalance the hero's beliefs and ideals, and in turn allow the hero to adjust and grow as a character. And so, we will take this blueprint and attempt to apply it to Ultron. Now, to fix Ultron, we need to first start with another movie, Iron Man 3. In the MCU, Ultron was created by Tony Stark and Bruce Banner in Avengers Age of Ultron. Unlike the comics, where Ultron had actually been created by Hank Pym, aka the original Ant-Man. But we think that things could have played much better if Tony Stark had created Ultron in Iron Man 3. Following the events of the first Avengers film, Tony Stark suffered from serious post-traumatic stress. But in our version, instead of Tony just building multiple suits, he's actually working on the Iron Legion day and night. Tony is a pretty reactionary guy, and he can be extremely obsessed about things. He saw some things in Avengers that he can't unsee. He believes that the Chitauri invasion was just the start, and something worse is coming. And so, he spends all of his time on creating an army of Iron Man suits with the intention to use them as a force against any threat to Earth. Unfortunately, the Jarvis AI can't operate that many suits on its own, and so Tony creates a far more advanced AI that could control the Iron Legion on its own. Without going too much into details, Tony gets his hands on Loki's scepter that obviously holds the Mind Stone and uses its power to create Ultron. Tony creates Ultron for the sole purpose of defending the Earth, and his mission is to achieve world peace. At first, Ultron is nothing more than an AI in a computer, but over the course of Iron Man 3, Ultron evolves. And eventually, he gets his own body and helps Iron Man save the day. But soon after, Ultron's mission to achieve world peace takes a dark turn. In our version, Ultron's plan is not global destruction. Ultron has one directive, it's in his core, and his mission is world peace. Simple as that. Ultron sees all that is happening in the world, and he understands he must take some drastic measures to achieve real-world peace. To complete his mission, he must eliminate many threats, including whole nations who put others at risk, disarming weapons of mass destruction, and killing millions to save billions. Sure, it's a bit similar to Hydra's plan in Captain America: The Winter Soldier, but Ultron's motivations are not evil. It's a cold, robotic logic. Ultron is not a human. He is not evil, he is neutral, and he has a mission to complete, and there is no room for empathy. After Ultron achieves his mission, a new age will begin in the world. The Age of Peace. Or should we say, the Age of Ultron. But Ultron understands that once he starts doing these things, the Avengers will try to stop him. While Ultron has contingency plans against them, he knows he can't risk the Avengers standing in his way. And so Ultron decides that the only course of action is to eliminate the Avengers first. He doesn't want to destroy the Avengers, but he sees no other option to complete his mission. Besides, Ultron understands that the Avengers have been compromised by their own humanity. He looks at the Hulk and he sees the biggest threat to Earth, and yet the Avengers see him as an ally. He looks at Thor and he sees only the destructive potential of the God of Thunder. He sees Captain America, a man that is defined by his ideals, someone who won't compromise for what he believes in. And of course, Ultron sees his creator, Tony Stark, a man who is so obsessed with making things right and making amends for his wrongdoings that he tends to cause more harm than good. Ultron uses the Hulk as proof that the Avengers are not reliable, that their loyalty and friendship puts the whole world at risk, considering that Green Monster is the most dangerous member of the Avengers. Ultron essentially puts a mirror in front of the Avengers. He presents them as hypocrites. For Ultron, there is no compromise or hesitation on what needs to be done, and that is something that the Avengers didn't face before, at least not at the time. With Loki, things were very clear. If they don't stop him, it's game over. With our version of Ultron, it's different. It's not as simple as fighting against an army of aliens. Here, the entire idea of the Avengers is questioned. What is really best for the world? A team of heroes who don't always agree on what's best, or one impartial robot who sees the world as it is? However, Ultron's motivations aren't the only thing that needs a fix. As we said before, one of the biggest issues about Ultron is how weak he was in the film. Ultron needs to be someone that can go against all of the Avengers on his own. This is an Avengers film after all. The whole point of having the Avengers assemble is for them to team up against a threat they can't defeat on their own. Ultron must be a menacing force, and if his body is made out of vibranium, he should be able to withstand some serious damage, even if all the Avengers attack him at the same time. But power and interesting motivations are not everything. Unlike villains like Loki, Killmonger, or Thanos, Ultron should be an emotionless machine. He shouldn't be like Tony Stark. He should be cold and calculated. He needs to be a creature of pure logic. We're not saying that Ultron should be a boring, non-talking robot, but he shouldn't be spewing a bunch of one-liners. We think that a good example for how Ultron should behave is Agent Smith from the Matrix films. This will allow an interesting contrast between Ultron and Vision, who is a machine with a soul, or at least a machine with a mind stone in his forehead. Of course, many of you will say that this is a departure from the comics. Things played out differently in the comics with Ultron, but the thing is that the MCU rarely follows the comics word for word. Marvel Studios usually picks and chooses different elements from the comics and adjusts things to fit their stories. Instead of stopping Ultron from dropping a city from the sky, the Avengers face a far more personal conflict. And so, the idea that maybe the world could be a safer place with Ultron as Earth's hero is a very interesting philosophical debate. Can we trust a machine to protect the world, or should we put our faith in a group of heroes, who at times have opposing opinions on what is the best course of action to protect the world? No matter how many times the Avengers save the world, a new threat will always rise right after. There will always be something terrible happening in the world, and the Avengers can't prevent it all. Wouldn't it be easier to just step aside and allow Ultron to do his thing if that means that a true world peace could be achieved? And ending the film with the question of who was really right makes the film far more engaging and thought-provoking. And let's be honest, when the MCU deals with these types of complicated questions, their films tend to be far better. Instead of it being about saving the world, it's about the question of what is the best way to protect the world. And of course, when Thanos shows up in Infinity War, one has to ask if Thanos would have been able to collect all the Infinity Stones and wipe out half of all life in the universe if Ultron stood in the Mad Titan's way. Now, of course, some will not see our idea as a fix, but we're just here to offer our own take on things. And we think that with our idea, things could have played out very differently. Let us know what you think about our idea down in the comments below, and let us know what your take is on Ultron and how he should have been written in the movie. Also, we'll be happy to hear your ideas for what other films we should fix. Be sure to stay tuned by subscribing to our channel, and we hope to see you in our next video. Thanks for watching.